Cornerstone Gundog Academy. Online resources to help you train your retriever.
Welcome to another episode of the Build From Here podcast. In this episode, we have a special guest, Nick Hibbs. How are you, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having us on. We appreciate it.
Glad to have you. So Nick made the drive from Michigan. Where are you from?
Yeah, so we're north of Grand Rapids, just about 30 minutes. Originally, I was born in Cedar, but we're residing, my wife and I, in Sand Lake now. But it was about a 10-hour drive down here, but it wasn't bad at all. So we made it here in one trip and in one piece. So
yeah, I'm glad you did. So your pup Winston, and we'll talk a little about him. Then I want to redirect us to kind of your history before we do that. But speaking of the 10-hour drive, that, if I'm not mistaken, I think last night at dinner you said that was his first that long of a drive.
Yeah, yep. So, obviously at the beginning stage, socialization was the biggest thing for us. So I kind of really took him everywhere. My other dog, Oscar, on the other hand, is not great with that. He whines in the car a lot. So that's kind of what I've always known. So socializing Winston at such a young age, he really got good in the car. And to the times where I literally forget about him. I mean, I forgot that he was in the back, and of course he's a black lab. So I was just driving, and then I look in the rearview mirror and I see two eyes, and I almost had a stroke, I swear. So, but no, he's really good in the car. I think we took maybe 3 or 4 breaks, throughout the duration of the 10-hour trip. He had no accidents, super quiet. He was just fantastic the whole ride down. So I couldn't have asked for a better travel.
That's awesome, man. So, well, obviously you're pretty into it if you're willing to do that.
Yep.
Where did this all start? But not the dog stuff, but your passion for hunting. Where was that something you've done since you were little? What's the story there?
So a lot of it really just derived from my dad. So when I was growing up, from anywhere from to 10 years old, we really didn't do a ton of hunting. You have your typical deer hunting. And then just some of his friends, just through his relationships, his personal relationships, he got into duck hunting through some of his friends. And so I tried it one time with him when I was really young, and it was probably the worst experience I've ever had. I was in a field. I didn't have the right clothes on. I was cold. I literally was bundled up, and it was just not fun. Until then, a couple years passed. My dad got associated with some friends with Black Dog Outfitters, and that was around Rockford, Michigan. And from there, the owner had a dog named West, and my dad just saw him in action and just fell in love. And so then he was like, okay, that's what a dog is for. That's what a lab is meant to do. It's, it was kind of looked at as more of a tool at the time, because, animals are a lot of work. And so we ended up getting our first Fox Red Lab, which his name was Maverick. And, my dad spent a lot of time with him. He trained him on my own. I was never really a part of those training sessions. I kind of just stood from afar and just kind of joined my dad every time he would go duck hunting. And ever since then, all I can remember is just him, myself, Maverick, and some of our friends just having some of the best memories we've ever had duck hunting.
Really?
So, that was he's getting older now. We retired him last year because we retired him, 2 years ago. And last year, obviously I'm the young guy, so I became the dog last year of getting the ducks, and I was just I don't really want to do this again. You get the thing is you get your full setup and you're there and you're hunting and you kill a bird, and then you gotta just completely get out of your setup, which isn't fun. And so I was I really want a dog, and so I just convinced my wife. I was hey, I would really like a dog. Is that something that would be okay? She was a little on the fence about it, but I was hey, look, I really. I feel I could be committed to this a little bit more than I ever have with anything else. And, as soon as I got him and I started watching the videos with CGA, it was all over. I was hooked from week one. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
So the need of not wanting to run out there.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted a dog.
Hey. Who doesn't want a good Labrador? So you got your dog. Sounds like y'all agreed on it.
Yep.
And before we talk about Winston and talk about him, let's talk about Maverick for a second. Just do you remember your first experience with him in the field?
So it was a bit of a traumatic experience. So Maverick's first ever retrieve was a goose, or I believe it was his first goose that he retrieved. And then it was the first goose that I ever shot.
Wow. Okay.
And so we were driving down. It was this guy's place, Walt. That was his name, and that was the place that we go to. I actually wanted to name Winston Walt originally because of that, because that was the first place I ever really got my retrieve. But Winston was a much better name. But nonetheless, I get the goose down. Maverick goes out, sniffs the bird, and comes back. And I thought my dad's head was gonna pop off. Like he was like, I cannot believe that, because he knows better, right? He knew exactly what he wanted. And so my dad grabbed him by the scruff of the neck, threw him over the boat, made him go get that bird. And, of course, I was like, I don't know, like 10 or 12 at the time. So I saw that and I panicked, started crying. I was like, no, you're being so mean to the dog and everything. And then, now realizing it, that was a moment, that was, a correction. He needed to understand what he does. And from that moment on, like I said, all that I can remember is Maverick just being just hands down one of the best dogs I've ever seen work in the water.
That's so cool. And he, I guess, so that's been your primary experience with a dog, other than seeing other people's dogs work.
I've seen a couple here and there, but not too many. Really, Maverick's the pinnacle of what I've been blessed to be able to watch and actually grow with him, because my hunting career, as you could say, has grown with Maverick, and I've seen him in every circumstance. So he's got some big shoes to fill, but Winston's on his way. So
yeah, Winston's a good dog. I'll tell you, it was good to get out there and train this morning and see him. And that's so cool. I love stories like that of just like how dogs, like 10 years or so, how long we have them, maybe a little longer, but that's like sections of our lives,
Oh yeah.
So it's irreplaceable. So Maverick's time is irreplaceable, but now we've got Winston, who's kind of rising up in the ranks and going to take his turn. So, and I'm pretty, newly married, so that's awesome. And so that's kind of a meaningful experience for you to have that dog as your family now. And then you'll be having that for old Winston, Lord willing, for 10, 12 years.
Yeah, absolutely. The training's been really different. With Maverick, it was just the straight fundamentals, right? He would stay, you'd call him on his name, he'd go get the bird in any sort of water, he would come back, and that was kind of the gist of it. He would understand hand signals here and there, but I never really focused with my dad on all those fundamentals and everything that he really did. And Maverick was just the most casual dog. You can go home and cuddle with him on the couch. You would have no idea that his drive is just through the roof.
Wow.
And so that was the biggest thing that I had to go off of, is I want a dog that can be a family dog, but then when it's time to work, he knows that. And Winston has followed in Maverick's footsteps tenfold. So, Maverick's a little bit old to really show Winston the way, which I was kind of, it's kind of unfortunate. But like I said, through the program, CGA really makes it easy. They lay everything out for you. There's really no excuse to not have a dog where you want it if you just don't put in the time. That's really all that it is. If you just follow the sessions and everything that you have to a T, and you watch all the videos, there isn't anything simpler that you could do to get your dog to where you want to be. Whether that's just straight obedience or whether that's a full-fledged gun dog, that's up to you. But it's the easiest program. There are some hard things, and you have to be consistent. That's the hard thing. But actually doing it, it's not rocket science.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's definitely not. It's not overly complicated. So it sounds like you're very fond of this journey so far. Now, obviously, you're for those that are listening here, you're I think week 31.
Yep.
So how has your perspective shifted from where you're at now to when you started this? Do you see things differently? Did things go any different than you were expecting? Is it what you thought it would be, like the training of your dog, or did you, what's your thoughts there? What was like your thoughts going in versus like how you view things now?
Yeah. So, when I first started, I was really eager. What I didn't know is how much obedience there was going to be.
Yeah.
So I was understanding okay, maybe a month, a month or two of obedience. And like I said, I never was on that side of it, so I didn't really know. And now, I was listening to Barton's podcast, The Lab, which you guys should check that out. But anyways, no, he talks about 90% of retrieving problems are obedience problems.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
was 100% the truth, right? Just the bit, you have to go through everything, even from day one, from when he gets onto the place board, which blew my mind just with the clicker and the treat and how quickly that resonated with him. And he just followed that to a T with everything that we did. As long as that treat was there, he would do whatever he needed to get that treat. Yeah. So the hardest thing that we had was like pulling those treats out of there. Yeah. So I would say that was the biggest gap that we had to jump, because that was like his driver. But then once we started to get into the retrieving and he wanted to build that drive to get the retrieve, that was like the biggest shift between once we got that done. The second half of the training of the retrieving aspect of it was much easier. Yeah. Because you didn't have to rely on cutting a hot dog for 20 minutes, So, and have slimy fingers at the end of your training. But no, man, it's, when I started, I was, of course I was not confident in myself because I never trained a dog before. So I was like, I'm not sure how this is going to go, but I'm going to give it my all. But there's also the potential of, hey, this is 52 weeks. This is a really long time. I'm not sure. Do I have it in myself to build this whole, to go through the entire program? Right. And I followed it to a T, 4 or 5 sessions a night, every single night after work, going up and down 3 flights of stairs in our apartment complex, whatever I had to do. And, believe it or not, I actually built some really cool relationships at the apartment complex with some people seeing that. They would mention all the time, hey, I saw you out there training your dog. That's really, really cool. And I was like, yeah, man, I appreciate it. If you guys want to come down and check it out, you can. Cool. Some people would watch from their balconies. It was, really, really cool. But there's really not much that changes from the beginning to the end. As long as you're consistent with it, the model that you guys have of build from here, you can easily see that. The more that you focus on the fundamentals at the beginning makes the more, I guess, technical side of things much, much easier. Yeah. And like I said, we've really focused on that stuff. And as you can see, it's really been successful, especially for Winston. So
yeah, I'm really happy with where Winston's at right now at week 31. Your diligence is clear. Your dogs will look different at this time frame. Yeah. And I was really happy to see that, because we're in a new place, completely new place. You're here at my grounds, you're training. Yep. That's a generalization thing. You're in a new week, and like Winston's still kind of like clicking and like getting it. That shows me that you've really been faithful in the work that you've done so far. And he just, one of the first things, first retrieve, got out there, boom, hammers down, just sprinting after it. And he's pretty quick. He's pretty quick.
He shocked me. Sometimes he can lollygag at home. Obviously, we had the heat, so being in the morning, it was a little bit cooler, some water on the ground. That definitely helped. But, compared to Violet, seeing her on the videos, knowing she's just a piston, and I was just like, I'm not sure if Winston can hold up to that. And, this morning he just hammered down, and I was impressed. I was like, wow, I'm pretty sure you've never ran that fast in your life, but I'm going to take it,
He's like, I got to show off.
He showed up to play, man. He showed up, and I couldn't be more thankful. It was a cool moment for all of us to see. So I was definitely happy with that.
Well, that's good. So how did the whole obedience go for any issues there? Is it pretty straightforward? You didn't have much issues?
I really, going through all of the obedience, I don't really remember any sort of like hiccup that we had. Really, we were able to just kind of go through week by week and really instill it, and it kind of just really stuck. Nice. The only thing that I would say that translated from the fundamentals that we tried to clean up is the heel work a little bit. And that's just because he's sniffs a lot, and especially like this morning, he's in a new place, and there's tons of smells. Yeah. So he wants to keep his nose to the ground, and he needs to make sure that he needs to look up to me and follow my path. Yeah. Haven't really done much like backwards heel work, although he still stays on my hip, but it's it's nothing too crazy. But other than that, every sort of basic obedience when we start the program, I've somehow instilled it in our life. So like if I let Winston out in the yard, we hang our whistle. I actually got it from my dad, but we hang our whistle on our door. And so I recall him through our whistle to make sure he comes. So he knows like 100% that when he hears that whistle, he's either coming inside or he's coming to me. whatever it is. Even inside the house now that we're doing whistle stop, I guess whistle stop's probably the biggest thing that we haven't done. We trained down in a little bit, but he actually did really well with sitting down and everything.
Yeah.
But it's just been such a long period that we haven't worked on that would probably be the one thing that we really want to clean up.
Yeah,
from,
the whistle
from the
stop,
obedience.
getting that down. I mean, I thought he did good. Even like today when we were working on that was cool to see.
Very
like,
cool.
He kind of whipped around really quick, and just like some of the details, like changing, like, okay, how quick are we gonna get him that retrieve? The quick, if they do something good, the faster you can reinforce.
Yeah.
And it was clear, like we did it real quick one time. Like the first 2 sits or so were slow. Then we got him to sit reasonably fast. We rewarded that. Then the next one, it was a little bit faster. Rewarded that. The next one, rewarded that. And then the third or fourth time, he was like, "Boom!
Yeah,
I'm sitting down. Let's go."
Yeah, he's really big on energy.
Yeah.
And you understand that with Violet, where I would get so excited that he would do something. Again, this was my first experience doing any of this, so like I remember when he went on the platform and would just sit on the platform, and then once he understood that, and then associated the word place, and we were like 5 yards away, and I would like place, and he would go to it, and I was just like, "Oh my God, did you see that? Did you see that?" I was like, "Babe, did you record that? Like, did you do it?" So, it's super exciting because it's just the development of what he's able to do and his capabilities. They're so smart. They're so smart. And I guess I never really realized that. I was never super into the dog training. I was just always like, oh, Maverick just kind of knows what he needs to do, and that's that.
Yeah.
But now we've got hand signals and whistle stops and healing and all this extra stuff that I know that he's capable of. I just have to teach him, and he'll understand it. It's really, really cool. So
That's cool. Well, he's doing good. You're doing great as a trainer, as a handler.
Try to.
Well, you're getting after it. What's been any challenges that you haven't made it through the whole thing yet. Typically, if you're going to face challenges, it's going to be within like the first 25 weeks.
Yeah.
Then after that, you'll face like little things, but like any challenges you face, and we can talk through kind of how you work through them.
Yeah. So actually, when he was like 8 to 9 months old, and for a lot of you guys who don't understand when you're to that phase, that's like he tests you basically. He knows exactly what I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
And he wasn't sure if he would do it or not. So like the place board.
Yeah.
I actually had to switch off the place board to the Momar stand because it was obviously a change in elevation, and that can be really helpful for a lot of things. But I would tell him to place, and he would just like go up to it, and he would just look at it and then look at me, and I'm just like, that's not gonna fly. I was like, that's it. You're not gonna do that. So, for a couple of sessions, I actually took the place board away because he wanted to be by my side, and so I took the place board out, and he did really well. And then I reintroduced the place board. Nice. And this was actually during our fire training, our gunfire conditioning. Yeah. So I think that's week like 22 or 25, somewhere along that lines. But the 8 to 9 month phase, he tested me on a lot of things. It was really important to not like lose my mind because it was really easy to. But luckily enough, I've looked at a lot of other people and their trainings, and patience is the number one thing that you can have with dog training. And so just working through those things, I would just bring the hot dogs back out. Yeah. I brought it back out for one session because obviously I didn't want to recondition the hot dogs, but I brought them back out, clicked and treat, and then it just like clicked again. Yeah. And I was like, this is what I want you to do. And whenever he wouldn't do it, I would just give him a soft correction. And he understood. So the hardest thing necessarily that I've ever done is just grab him by the scruff of the neck, sit him down after I told him no, place, you need to be here. And after that, we really haven't had any issues. I mean, today he was fantastic on the place board whenever I asked him. And so sometimes he can be testy with that a little bit, but really not much. So that was, I would say, probably our biggest thing that we ever had to go through is just him testing me through those phases through those 8 to 9 months when I would ask him to do stuff. But it would only take about one to two corrections, and he would really go through. But that place board was the only one that stood out. That's why I have the Momarsh, the Cato board, and I have the.
So you've solved that problem now. You kind of like we're gonna fix that.
And like I don't care what board it is, you're going there. So he but yeah, now he loves it. So his Momarsh stand is definitely his favorite. He loves that, which is good because that's what we would hunt with. That's what we're gonna condition him on the most. But the other ones, he'll be right. Actually, technically, he'll be behind me because it'll be a kayak. But nonetheless, that was the hardest really thing that we had to work through. So
that's awesome. Hey, I hope you've enjoyed this episode so far. There's more to come, but I wanted to interrupt real quick and let you know, if you're thinking about training your hunting dog, maybe you are training your hunting dog, or you're thinking about getting a puppy and you don't really know where to start, what to do next, or how to solve problems in your retriever training, we would love to help you. Cornerstone Gundog Academy exists to help guide you on your training journey and to really help you have a dog that you can be proud to take in the blind and hunt with you, and also just have the ability to say, I did that. Nothing's greater than when you've trained a dog really well, your buddies see you working in the blind and they ask you who trained that dog, expecting that you're gonna say, hey, I dropped this dog off to some pro. Well, no, you ended up doing it yourself, and you have the satisfaction of saying, I did that myself. So if that's you, you're thinking about it and you just need help on the journey, go to cornerstonegundogacademy.com and check it out, browse the site, and you'll see the different options that we have available to help you on your journey, and we'd love to help you in whatever way seems like it's gonna work for you best. So with that said, visit cornerstonegundogacademy.com, and now back to the episode. So those challenges you faced with the place, you've kind of overcame those, you solved that.
Yep.
That kind of leads me into something I thought was interesting that we kind of talked about today when we let you run Violet a little bit. So you're like, that was really, you've mainly ran Winston.
Yep.
I guess pretty much the only dog you've trained. So learning to handle her differently,
Yeah.
because every dog's different. Let's talk about a little bit of that and kind of like your thought process on learning to read Winston. Just like, was there anything along the journey that like stood out to you? Like, hey, like moments, like aha moments. Oh man, I just learned something here.
Yeah. So, that was a really interesting experience, running Violet like that. Like I almost felt like it was a stranger. I mean, like it sounds really weird, but I've spent hours, like hundreds of hours with Winston, probably thousands of hours, honestly. And I know every little antic that he does. I could tell you, I mean, for a perfect example, we sent him out on a line and he came back because he stopped, I think after like 10 yards, came back and he wasn't really sure.
Yeah.
And then he came back and I could, ears up, eyebrows up, he was locked and loaded. I was like, oh, actually, I'm going to send him this time because I have confidence that he's going to go get it. And he went and he crushed it. He came back. And then I was with Violet and I was like, holy moly. I was like, I don't know anything about this dog. I don't know if she's going to go. I mean, obviously I've watched all the videos, but up to this point watching her, but it was really surreal. I almost felt like a rookie again. Yeah.
Wow.
I was just like, I wasn't sure, like, because I can yell at my dog, but I was like, I didn't want to yell at your dog or correct it in a way that you don't typically correct it. Cause Winston's like, for Winston, his biggest word is no. Right. Yeah. And he's associated with that. So does that work with Violet? I don't know, right? If she's going to come straight back or if she's going to juke me out, right? So it was just a really interesting experience. And I think it's something that I would actually incorporate with our training. So because my dad's going to be the one that's hunting with me, my dad's been a part of a couple of sessions when we were doing the gun conditioning, but nothing outside of that. So that would be a really good thing because Winston needs to learn to whoever's directing him, not just me.
Yeah.
And so it's really important. And
I think a lot of people don't practice that too. That's why that was funny. Like when we first got there, you did a few retrieves, like, hey, let me run your dog now.
Yeah.
And just see. And I guess has he been worked by anybody else before? Was that his first time? Maybe your wife?
Yeah. With the gun conditioning, yes, my dad stood down there and threw the bumper with the pistol up in the air, but that was it.
But nobody had ever seen
Nobody ever like ran Winston. So you were the first
Winston,
person
when I
that got
stood
to
beside
do.
him, he was like trying to like, he looked at you, he's like, okay. I was
Yeah.
like, Mark, he's like, okay, I got this. And then when he picked it up, he's like, should I come back
To
here
you
or to
or-
you?
yeah,
And he wanted to
no.
get back to you. Then he finally decided to come back.
Yep.
And I thought that, that's fun. But it's always like, it also takes a little bit of time to, for the dog to get to know the handler too.
Yeah.
But if you do enough of that, like for an example, in your case, if your dad's going to maybe run him sometimes or you're going to run him, it's worth getting out there doing enough that Winston's comfortable working with both of you.
Yeah, absolutely. My wife's done it a couple of times in the yard, like nothing like super formal, but just like throwing it. And then while I'm kind of like on the side, but again, like sometimes he comes back and he's not sure who to go to.
Yeah.
But I think that's a really underrated training that we could do, that you could do with your dog. because you never know where you're going to be, right? Maybe I'm out of the boat adjusting something and I can't be right next to him, and my dad needs to send him, right? That'd be a crucial training. That's something that needs to happen. So definitely something we'll look forward to instilling in our training at some point. So
yeah, it's always funny, like the first time you do it, the dogs are like mind blown. They're like, I didn't know anybody else could work me, you know?
Right? Oh yeah. He seemed to, Winston seemed to pick it up. He got his mark, and you called his name, and he ran right for it.
Yeah,
and
I was happy to see that. Yeah, sometimes you do it and they're like,
no, I'm not sure about
or sometimes
this.
they'll break or whatever,
Even Violet was the same way, man. She healed right next to me, and I gave her, she was just getting a little head. So, I noticed that you did the snaps. So I did the snaps with her, and she backed right on up, sat down, threw the mark, brought her back, got her up on place, and then she went for it. So, like I said, and that's just the foundation. Your training is always going to fall, especially in generalization, any sort of new environment. It's going to fall back to how much you've really trained, how much you've done the foundations. And, again, it's as long as they're there, anybody can really run that dog. So
did you have any, so I know a big part of what we do, Cornerstone's based on learning theory and all that. Did you have any, was that new to you, talking about acquisition, fluency, generalization, maintenance, and certain things like that? Was that new to you? Maybe familiar with some of that in the background, stuff you've done in the past?
Actually, the beginning, so when you first start the program, there's 4 sessions is what you typically do. It's 4 15-minute sessions. Well, actually, they're 5 to 10-minute sessions. So I was like, that doesn't sound like a lot of time, right? I was thinking, man, I'm going to have to spend hours every single day.
Yeah.
But you got to realize you got to keep it fun, right? You got to keep it fun when they're really young. And I was like, oh, that's kind of smart. That makes sense. You can't just keep going until they're tired. Yeah. You have to end it when they want to keep doing it. I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then once we got done with those every now and then we finally switched to the one long session where it was acquisition, handling, and then steadiness, stuff like that. I was like, oh, I'm really excited for this, because now I don't have to focus on breaking up my periods, because usually I'd set a timer in between each session and keep it uniform. But now it's I just get to work on everything all at once. Yeah. And that was my favorite part, because, I like to keep him locked in. And sometimes, and during the beginning periods is when you would say, all right, go play. And then you have to get them re-engaged, and you almost spent that full 5-10 minutes getting them re-engaged to go to basically to just go to the next break. Yeah. So with Winston, throughout a longer duration, now I can just keep him locked in for 45 minutes to an hour, and there's awesome. No issue. So that's
a lot of people don't understand. One of the greatest things about when you're working a dog is they learn through that association. So if you always push them to the point to where they're tired, they get to learn when they can turn it off.
Right.
If you cut it off every time before they're tired, they learn that you're the one that cuts it off. Yep. Which makes sense when you're going to duck hunt. You don't know when you're going to leave. We talked about earlier, it's just a classic. Everybody, you're sitting out there, you're not killing anything. You start packing your stuff up, and all of a sudden you look and the ducks start coming.
Exactly.
Right? Yep. So having the ability to tell your dog when it's not going to turn off, instead of allowing them to turn it off. And they don't even recognize it. Yeah. Because ultimately it's something that just happens naturally. And that's the same thing with any association. A lot of people, when they're working on fetch and hold, or they're working on getting their dogs to retrieve, they're okay with some sloppy things, and that's association. If you it's okay to shape that or progress over perfection that, but if you let that happen for too much, then it becomes an association that's developed. It becomes a habit that's created. So, and that was one thing I loved about your dog too. His delivery was nice, on point. He does a good job getting a good solid hold, picking up the bumper. And the cool thing is you're at that stage, you just got out of fetch, hold, and release. If you're on 31, so you've been out for 7 weeks, 8 weeks, or whatever. And so really from week 24 to 36, there's a period there to where we call it the walk, jog, run. So you've been doing obedience, you get into some fetch work, and it feels like you're picking up some steam. Then all of a sudden it's you turn on the afterburners and everything. It's you're just taking off, because you're throwing so many new skills at them because they can handle it, because you've built the proper foundation. But I loved how you handled him today. There was a couple of times where he didn't grab it perfectly, just a simple correction, how you corrected it. Yeah. And, let's talk about that for a minute. Was that, because I think you said that your other dog was trained a little bit differently, kind of old school. Yeah. So how has that been different for you? Learning that it doesn't always take brute force to get them to do it. It takes more of a thoughtful process.
Exactly. So, when I was about a freshman in high school, I worked for a kennel of German Shorthair Pointers. And the dog that I got, Oscar, his mom, Spice, she was a grand champion and she was a trial dog. So she was like, the best of the best. And the trainer, he was an older gentleman, so he was just kind of tough on his dogs. So that's pretty much all that I've known. My dad wasn't really tough on Maverick. He had his moments, but it was a love relationship. Like
awesome.
Maverick was that dog that just his drive was from him. He didn't do it to please my dad. Yeah. He wanted to get that bird and he wanted to bring it back. Right, that was his passion. And so, like for a perfect example, that fetch, hold, release, that's probably the one thing that we've worked the most on. I'm pretty sure I did that for a week and a half, maybe almost 2 weeks, because if I hold that bumper in front of Winston's face and I told him fetch, he would look at me like I'm stupid. He would just be like, "What do you want me to do with this?" And I'm like, "You carry this around all the time. What? I don't understand." And I watched a ton of different videos, even just outside of CGA, to maybe get a different perspective, because there's many different ways to do it, like you said. And so I took the bumper and I rewarded every small little niche towards it. So like he would come to it as soon as he touched it with his nose, click, treat. Then he would do it again, click, treat. Yeah. And maybe that was our full session for one day. It was just him touching it. Because then the next time I would do it. Then he gets a little bit of a bite. And then as soon as his mouth opened just a little bit, instead of like forcing it in there, shove it, I let him walk at his own pace. Yeah. And now it gets to a point where like you said, a lot of his holds are right in the middle. That's, because we worked through that so much. And that was during the winter time too. Yeah. So I really had to work on that inside, not outside, because as puppy teeth are going in and if there's snow on it, it's cold. They don't want to hold it in their mouth. And so doing so inside, focusing on that so much. And I mean, that just translated right out to the field, which, awesome. I'm super happy to find. But, I also wanted him to heel and turn around at my side versus, coming. And so I would make him hold the bumper and heel and sit and turn around. And so that was kind of part of the whole conditioning that we worked on. Yeah. And like I said, just click and treat at every small little milestone. And we just worked our way up to it. And I just let him go at his own pace. I can't, some guys, they'll put their dog in, a slip lead tied and they're like, "You're going to hold on to this, or I'm going to make you hold on to this. I'm going to hurt you if you don't hold on to it." Yeah. And that's just not the way that I want to train. Even a lot of people, they're like, "Oh, I see you have an e-collar on your dog," and they already associate that with being, a bad or a mean trainer. But you can see I never used it once today, right? It was just sometimes it's the biggest thing that it's used for is for him staying in the yard, making sure that, because we don't have a fence up, and especially getting close to the road, which he's conditioned not to, but he's a puppy. Every now and then he gets close.
He's a lab and a puppy. Still young, very
exactly.
young.
But man, he's fantastic in taking those small milestones towards that fetch, hold, and release, and it's really just helped significantly. I think his longest hold is like 4 minutes.
That's solid.
I think that's his longest that he had that I recorded. But
that's
obviously
plenty of time, right?
Yeah, it's way too much time. Yeah, but push the boundaries, man. Yeah,
might as well push it a little bit. And it's funny. So on the fetch, hold, and release, I love how I think that's a place in most programs. Say there's hold conditioning, there's force fetch, and then we do a process called fetch, hold, and release, which is different than both of those. Really, it's actually it'd actually be more similar to force fetch than hold conditioning, just a different motivation.
Correct.
But what's so funny, we did a live the other night. I don't know if you were able to make it on or not, but I wasn't. We did a live and it was basically on the topic of fetch, hold, and release. And so up until this point, place goes lightning fast. You're going to get your dog on place in the first day. You're going to get your dog to heel in the first 2 days, 3 days. You're going to get your dog to do this and that. And then you come and you do this, and something they actually naturally do, they'll pick things up, they'll retrieve it. If you throw it, they'll probably go get it and bring it back. They may even put it in your hand pretty good. It may not be perfect, but the reason we have that fetch, hold, and release process, and you already know this, is because we're not leaving anything to chance. Even if you've got a natural delivery, we want to take and perfect that as much as possible. And really, because we already talked about association, is make sure that when the dog is doing something, it's perfect every time. Yeah. It's not practice makes perfect. hard work makes perfect, but perfect practice is going to make perfect. So you got to practice, get to the place where you can get it perfect. Then you got to practice from there. But anyways, what I thought was funny on the live is like, people are like, we're talking to the members, are like, man, this seems like it's taking a long time, and because people were trying to force it. They're like, okay, I'm gonna, they expect it to go good. They're trying to push the bumper in the dog's mouth. They're like, no.
Yep.
And I get it. It's an interesting process. We're like, because they do the first thing and the dog touches the bumper of the nose, and then that's it. And then they're like, they feel like at a standstill. But, or maybe they don't even touch the bumper. But my recommendation was like, I put the odds in my favor. Okay. So I like to get a well-bred dog. I put the odds in my favor. I like to do everything I do, and we call it setting ourselves up for success. That's literally what we say 1 billion times in the videos. But when, some people were saying, the dog will turn its head. Well, if the dog turns its head, that's an awesome thing. Why? Because you can set the bumper closer to them, and then they're going to accidentally bump into the bumper, and then you click and treat.
Exactly.
Instead of, you don't want to, one mistake somebody mentioned that they had made on the call is that they were taking the bumper and then they were pushing it to their nose and then clicking and treating. Well, that's a problem because the dog didn't do the move. So the dog's like, okay, great, I'll take a treat. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep. So did you face any of those challenges as you went through? Because it sounds like you ran into a little bit and then you finally just realized, hey, I loved what you said. You're rewarding for every incremental little step. Any step in the direction you rewarded for, like saying any progress you rewarded for.
Yeah, exactly. So I tried a couple of different things. Inevitably, the one that worked was actually the duck. So I have like our typical bumpers. You have your puppy bumper, the one that's really small, because I was like, he actually held that one the most because it had a smaller circumference at the time. And so, I would put that in his mouth, and because of the way that those are made, like with the kind of like the wingers on the side, that it makes him hold it in the middle. And so once we got to a period of working our way through all that, which legitimately was hours of getting him to do that. That wasn't just something that happened overnight. Like I said, about a week and a half, I think, is what we
that's actually really not that bad. Week and a half, that's really not that bad.
It's really not that bad, but when you're doing it every single night, it wasn't like it was like Sunday, Monday,
treacherous because like, is this going to turn out? Is this going to turn out?
So like I said, every little victory, legitimately, even if he held it, like he would come to a point where it would come in his mouth and he would just drop it, I would still click and treat. I'm like, you're progressively getting to where we want you to be. And then eventually what I did is I actually went on to Retriever Training Supply, and I bought the wrong size bumper. I bought the goose, the giant one. And so we did the hold conditioning, and then we started to do marks with that. And because it was such, so much larger than all the other ones, he had no issue with it.
Interesting.
But
that's awesome.
he wouldn't grab it from the side. It was the only bumper that he never cigars, that he always just holds right in the middle. And so because
it's too heavy to really kind of grab it from it, because they'll like flop around and drag
exactly.
it around.
He'll drag, exactly. And he's not super high off the ground. So it really worked in our favor. And then once he got conditioned with that, I bought the other ones. And because it was so much easier for him to just hold right in the middle because he was conditioned for the larger size dummy, that's really what that's almost made his delivery perfect. It can be different for everybody, but that was the way that I tackled
that's
it.
Hilarious.
And it was
that's pretty cool.
It was perfect. So a mistake ended up being super beneficial for us.
It ended up making your life easier. That's hilarious. I love that. Well, so we transitioned out of that now from week 23, I believe is where we end fetch, hold, and release to, so starting 24, you transition to the field to where you're at now. What's been the last series of weeks been like for you so far? Has it been like, obviously you're doing so much new things. How has that gone when you're introducing so many new things at once?
So I would say the biggest mistake that I took on the entire program so far was the launcher. I got really excited to use the launcher. And that's just because it's the most simulated feeling to the real thing with a loud bang and him still getting it and everything. So I went to Cabela's and I got my launcher because the Lucky Duck one that I really wanted was out of, the one that you put on your hip and launch out. So that one was out of order, and I really wanted that for the extra hand, but I didn't, they didn't have it. Not a big deal. And so I grabbed that, and I think we were still like 3 weeks away from it. And I just got way too ahead of myself and I kind of like, I still did the same progression of getting closer to him. I started like 50 yards away, but I started off from the side, almost like a remote retrieve. And then I got really, really close. And at the time I thought that he got scared of it, which is why he was jumping off the platform every time that I would go to just pull it down, because he would resonate the sound of the spring. And so that was part of our place, because he was on place. So then he associated that training and everything. So I was like, oh man, that I can kind of see how now he doesn't want to go on place, because I thought he was scared, because if I would set. And now then once we got to that training, I realized that he just wanted to break to go get it.
He was ready. He just wanted to beat the bump. Oh, that's hilarious. Okay.
So the most, as far as our training goes, he was really good with the pistol. We started out and then worked our way in, but it probably took anywhere from about 300 to 400 shots for him to really get kind of used to it, conditioned to the pistol, to where I could go up, put it behind my back, throw it out, shoot it. He wouldn't have any sort of issue with it, because what I would do is I would throw it out there and then I would pretend like I'm shooting it. And then during that move of me quickly going like that, that's where he would break.
Oh, okay.
And so then once we just kind of worked our way through that, I took his lead, put it down, and I put my foot on it.
Nice.
And I was like, you're not going to break. It's, this isn't something that's going to freak out. So I threw it, and this is something that I didn't reward the treat through. I didn't really want to do that at all, because we were really far past those. And again, you just slowly work on it. I mean, I was even throwing dummies 5 yards in front of his face with a pistol. Yeah. Again, it's just those small progression that's really got us to it. But the difference is that he didn't really get everything like right away at everything. We've had to work for every single sort of foundation, every sort of advanced movement. We've just put in the hours to get to where he is. Yeah. And that's all that it really is. So
it's just work.
Yeah.
But it's fun.
It's very
enjoyable.
fun.
Well, most days it's fun. There are some days you're like, I don't know.
Even on the bad days, dude, I try to look at it and I'm like, even on a bad day, I'm still outside and I'm training my dog. What am I going to be doing else besides this? Even if it's a bad day, I could be at work. I could be sitting watching a TV, not being productive, but I'm creating a bond and a relationship with, my best friend, my hunting buddy, so that's where I like to take it, because he's, if he was a human, he'd know everything about me, because he's just my best friend in any way, like driving through the field, that's like one of the best moments that you can have, driving with the truck with your dog right next to you and on some hunting grounds, dude. It's a really surreal moment. So that's what we look forward to a lot. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
This episode of the Build From Here podcast is brought to you by Retriever Training Supply, gear your retriever will love. If you're in the market for some new training dummies, maybe you need a Kato board, a launcher, or really anything else you need for your retriever training journey, you can find it at retrievertrainingsupply.com. Go ahead, visit retrievertrainingsupply.com, find the gear your retriever will love. So kind of talking about just, your relationship and connection with him, what's, was that a big part of like doing it yourself? Was like the idea, because clearly I guess Maverick, you had a pretty strong connection with Maverick. Let's talk about that, even the connection now with Winston and Maverick and comparing all of that.
Yeah, so I remember when we first got Maverick, actually a couple of our friends, a couple of my brother and I's friends were with us, and then my dad, and we went and picked him up, and then, I carried him in my arms all the way home. But yeah, we just, Maverick was our dog, so on top of the bonding that my dad and I had through duck hunting, because, I was a young man at the time, so I went from 12 to, now, that's a really important, especially in a young boy's life. So, and my dad's my role model, so that followed along with creating a bond with him and Maverick, because Maverick was always with us wherever we went. And so getting a dog of my own, like understanding my dad's relationship that he has with Maverick is just so much tighter than, like, it's so much stronger than what it was. Like, you can see it from a surface, but until you actually go through it, like I've gone through with Winston, you'll never understand the bond that you can have with just one dog that you spend countless hours with, just working on it and bringing the potential that he has out of him. Yeah. So again, Winston wasn't a dog where he had just like this insane stacked pedigree, and just, everybody knew the breeder and all this other stuff. I just got him literally in the middle of nowhere in Michigan, from this guy, Jared. And he had so many pups that he just way too many at once, and I think he had like 2 or 3 litters at one time, which is what he didn't want. One of the dogs, obviously created the third litter that he didn't want, and so he was selling dogs at a cheaper price, and so Winston I literally got for like $300. Nothing. Yeah. Nothing crazy.
That's wild.
And so that's like I'm saying, that just shows you that if you just put in the time, he still had his paperwork. So he was AKC registered, had the full pedigree, had all the paperwork, and made sure that he was purebred. And cause I wanted a purebred, that was my one stipulation. And I was geared to spend $500, $800, even up to $1,300 on a dog, right?
Yep.
That, typical price. And it was listed for 500. He's like, yeah, I'll do it for 3. And I was like, I'm on my way. Like, I'm coming right now. So we get Winston, and, of course, there's always going to be that little bit of speculation of, is he going to have it in him?
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
And ever since day one, man, just spending time with him as a puppy, spending more time with him even as an adult now, or I guess a young adult. Technically, he's almost 7 in real life, but yeah. So he turns 1 next month, and man, that time just flies by. And
that's crazy.
You get so focused on the week to week. Okay, what are we doing next? What are we doing next? And you realize, I'm like, man, I spend like all my time with Winston. Even when I go inside, right? We go watch a movie, he's cuddling you. We go to bed, he's cuddling you, right? He's literally is like a child. And, and I can tell when he's about to run off. I can tell when he's in a bad mood. I can tell when he's tired. I can, I just, so many antics, right? Because I've spent so much time with him,
right.
That I guess I never really focused on or really kind of like comprehended. Even with Maverick, there are some small things here and there, but with Winston, like going from Winston to Violet, I was like, I can't pick up on any of her antics because I just don't know her as a handler. Right. And Winston, man, I could tell you everything that he's about to do just by his demeanor. It's just the way that the training is created and just spending that much time. It's just, it's just the way that it is. So it's very eye-opening to me, and like I would take a bullet for that dog. I would do anything for that dog just because of what we've both grown in our own ways as a handler and as a dog. And, I'm excited to see where we can take him.
That's awesome.
So I look forward to it.
Well, that bond is tight, and y'all aren't finished yet. You still got some weeks ahead, but clearly we're in getting approaching season. It's people typically, at least in my experience, don't seem to really start thinking about season until after, a little bit later in the summer. But I mean, I'm already thinking about season. So
I'm always thinking about it.
What's your thoughts on that? So clearly you're going to be hunting with Winston this year. He's going to be ready. I mean, he's, by anybody's standard, I would say right now, he's a great dog. Yeah. Like, I mean, just if anybody saw that dog, like, man, that's a good dog. So obviously there's still a lot of training left between here and there to get to where we can get him. What are you most excited about moving forward, and kind of what do you envision this season looking like for you?
Yeah, so my dad and I took a little bit of a different approach this upcoming year. So typically we've always hunted out of boats. We have a duck water right now. We had a War Eagle with Maverick. We've really done everything with Maverick. So we have a Carson's pintail. Yeah. And then we hunted out of a War Eagle, and now we have a duck water. And Maverick's been through all of those. So out of all of them, it's nice with the pintail because you can get nice and low and in cover, and you can typically pull in more ducks. And so that's kind of the way that we looked at it. And Ascend has a really nice kayak, which is the H12. It's 12 foot long. It's got 2 bays in the front and the middle, in the front and the back. Yeah. And then Northern Flight has a blind that goes on top of that specific kayak that's got like a seat in it and everything. Right. So that gets us our low profile, and then Winston is going to be in the back. So as far as our training, as far as our hunting for this year, that's what we're really going to go towards more, is sitting in something like that. So I'm really excited to be able to get into spots and more of an opportunity for Winston to, get more, ducks and geese, whatever it may be. Hopefully more ducks, because that's my favorite to shoot. I really like those. So that training, so our training is going to gear us up for that. So the water aspect is going to be the really big training. But also I'm really excited for whistle stop and hand signals. Yeah. That's kind of like the flashy part of what you're doing. It's crucial if he doesn't understand where a duck is. So, but like to send him whistle, him sit down, and you direct him. Like that right there is going to be just something that's so cool that I haven't seen from, a lot of other handlers. Some people don't go that far. They just scream and shout and say, "Hey, over there."
Yeah.
Maverick got hand signals, so we never really had to use him that much because he was a great marking dog. But with Winston, like I said, you never know. Being in thicker cover with a kayak like that, it's going to be crucial. So that's something we're not going to skip over, and that's something we're definitely going to get ingrained and see where it takes us. So
that's exciting.
Really
And, a lot of people think, I don't think I need all that hand signal stuff. I just need a dog that'll hunt. Now, I will say there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
But, once you've got to the point where you're at now where a dog could hunt, it's not that much more work just to keep going a little bit. Most of your work, it's heavily weighted on the front.
Yeah.
And there's detail work on the back end, finishing work. But it's definitely heavily weighted on the front of just as far as the labor intensive stuff goes. Once you get out to where you're retrieving with your dog, can you really count that as work? That's kind of that's just straight up fun.
Oh yeah. If you can train a dog to go on their name and steadiness and bring a duck and come back, you can do hand signals.
Absolutely.
And I think even hand signals were like week 15 or 18.
Yeah.
You bouncing them back and forth between the place boards. So, it's definitely something that is crucial that you should, like I said, you don't have to, no, you don't. But sometimes even the dog can't find the duck depending on where it landed, or if you shot 5 of them at once and they don't know where all of them are, so it's definitely proven to be helpful. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Most of my hunts, we got to have hand signals just because, we're shooting and we're going to hit some ducks.
Oh yeah.
They might not always fold. We're going to hit them. They're going to go down.
I don't know what that's like.
I like my favorite is when we fold them dead, but
oh man,
you have to
Just
be prepared. You have to be prepared for every situation, and we've had multiple situations where we've even got footage of Violet on one hunt. This was the last day. I think we have a CGTV episode out on this. I don't know if we posted it or not, but if we haven't, we need to. Talking to our camera guy there, but this was literally the last 30 minutes. We were in Kansas, we were getting ready to leave because this is the last day of duck season.
Yeah.
And we're not shooting anything. We got to go. And we're sitting there. And 2 ducks come in. We kill them. We had a CJ member with us, Tom Foreman. So I let him retrieve first. And then the last bird was barely hit. And but it went way out in the buckbrush. So it's total blind retrieve. Just had to cast her back, and then also having her go off vocal too, because at one point she got into the buckbrush where she couldn't see me. I was just go back, and she just kept going, and we ended up getting the duck. So that was fun. But that stuff I think is, if you want to be, to me, if you're the dog guy, I think you definitely should invest in a little bit of that time. It's so much fun, and it's going to pay off. And people, when you pick up a duck like that, people are like, "That's awesome!
That's crazy.
We gotta have you come back. We gotta go hunting again."
Yeah, exactly. Yep. The flashy parts of stuff like that is always fun. I remember when Maverick got a retrieve like that in the Straits when we went, and it was choppy water. One little maybe 2 footers. But for a dog, that's very that's very choppy. Yeah, right. You got to be careful. And he did just over 100-yard retrieve in the water.
Really?
And it was
insane.
At that time, I think we had 8 guys with us in 2 boats. Wow. And they were just astounded. They were like, "Holy moly!"
Cool.
And Maverick just came back and dropped it. It was like a mic drop, just like a stud. I was like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, he's
that's a good dog.
He's that guy."
That's awesome. I love those moments. It's everybody's calm, everything becomes still after the chaos.
Oh yeah.
And then everybody's watching the dog go out there, and it's just you can hear a pin drop. Everyone's like, "Are they gonna get it?
Yeah.
Are they gonna get it?" And then boom, they get it. Or if they don't, they don't. But it's that's fun. Well, man, it's just an honor to have you here. It's an honor to have you take the time to drive down here to come train. I've enjoyed training with you. It was fun getting some training footage out there, getting to show some behind the scenes of you actually in week 31, showing some of actually showing and teaching Winston, and he learned pretty quick. You know, still got some more sessions to do, but he was from when we started to where he was clicking. I thought that was cool. And it's just an honor to see your passion for this too. You know? That's I know when I talked to you originally, I was like, man, you just I could see your excitement about it. You love it. You're passionate about it. So it's for us, we're always just proud of our members. We're proud of you for putting in the work, and for using our program, right? Without you, it just wouldn't work because people like you got to put in the work to make it happen to show that it works. And Winston's a great dog. I'm really proud of him. I was stoked to see how he's done. So, man, you've done a good job with him. You've done an incredible job.
Oh, thank you, man. And the honors is all mine and my family's. As soon as we got the call and you guys wanted us to come down, I was jazzing at the bit. I couldn't wait to tell my dad. I said, "You have no idea where I'm going in 3 weeks."
That's awesome.
We just appreciate the platform that you guys have, and of course the members as well. You guys are fantastic. Whenever anybody has an issue, we can always come to you guys and know that it's a safe place and that we're not going to be judged for whatever we're doing. And it's eye-opening. So it's great to have a place like that, just in case you hit a roadblock, because you never know. From myself and my family, we appreciate you guys, appreciate all the members. Thank you for letting us come out here and the opportunity to do this, because this is definitely one to mark off the bucket list. So thank you.
That's awesome, and we appreciate you. Well, in honor of closing this podcast out like we always do, for me, it's about it's about getting y'all's perspective. Like we believe in our members, and you've learned a lot. Like even up until this point, you've learned a lot. Like from where you started to where you are now, like you're knowing how, like you're at a solid place for training dogs. Like you know what it means. I loved how you handled Violet, how you adapted really quick with her. That just goes to show that you've really studied and learned the program. So what's your advice? I know we kind of talked about patience. Is that kind of like your last, like if you had one piece of advice to give somebody that's thinking about doing this, is that kind of like, hey, your advice, or you got anything else?
I would say two things: patience and confidence. Know that as a handler, you have to have confidence in yourself and you have to have confidence in your dog. So the main thing I would say, number one, is patience. I'm telling you, don't blow up on your dog, because if you blow up on your dog, that's going to create a bad memory. So having good patience, even if they do something wrong, just soft correction, do what you need to do, get them back on. And if it keeps going bad, you can always just stop it and try a new session. But always patience is number one, but confidence is number two. Like from my background, I've never done this before, right? Wow. And you've seen where Winston can go from somebody who's literally never done this before. So to say that your program doesn't work would be an absolute lie. So anybody can do it, as long as you guys just stick to the script, watch the videos, do your homework, and do what you're supposed to do and follow through. And anybody can do it. So just have confidence in yourself as a person, as a handler, that you can do it. So
that's awesome, man. We appreciate you, and look forward to continuing this journey with you. Yes. And appreciate the advice for sharing with everybody. And we'll be obviously following along your journey, and then looking forward to seeing this fall. This is the Super Bowl is coming. The big moment's coming. Yep. We're going to get out there and get your dog in the field, and I think it's going to be a good moment. So I can't wait to see it.
Is. Yeah, no, it sure is. I'm looking forward to it. That first duck that comes down is going to be a surreal moment. So I'm looking forward to it.
That's awesome, man. Well, thank you, and build from here.
All right, sounds good.
Thanks for listening to the Build From Here podcast. To learn more about retriever training or our podcast, visit cornerstonegundogacademy.com/podcast.